Welcome to this episode of 60 Second Retail, a BDO podcast keeping you in the know on events and trends in the retail and consumer products industry impacting your bottom line in just a few short minutes.
Welcome back to the 60 Second Retail podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Cutler, National Leader of the Retail and Consumer Products Industry Group at BDO. I'm very excited to dive into today's episode because we are reviewing some of the key findings recently published in our 2025 Retail CFO Outlook Survey. If you're not familiar, the CFO Outlook Survey is an annual report providing insights from CFOs on their top challenges and priorities for the year ahead. And with us today is Michelle Michaelis, Managing Director in our Business Restructuring Services Group at BDO. Michelle is joining us to help us understand how retailers are planning to bridge the gap between revenue and profitability as they face down quite a few hurdles in the year ahead. Welcome back to the show, Michelle.
Thank you, Natalie. It's great to be here.
Great, Michelle. So I'll dive right into it. With 85% of the retailers experiencing revenue growth in 2024, but only 38% are seeing profitability gains, what strategies can retailers adopt to address the rising costs that are eroding these margins?
Well, Natalie, I think it's important to realize that a significant portion of 2024's revenue gains versus profitability was largely due to retailers continuing to drive discounts while not necessarily getting relief from those increasing costs associated with their products. And honestly, those pressures of higher costs, they're not likely going to change in 2025. As we continue to see uncertainty relative to things like staffing, distribution, and now potential tariffs being put into place. That said, retailers can and honestly are beginning to address some of these impacts through creative solutions, whether that's now addressing SKUs and product mixes. In some cases, this may be seen as the mini versions or shifts in packaging to help manage costs, while still offering those same products and not alienating or losing customers, or leveraging data and sentiment analysis. In other words, using predictive AI to do things like align prices with perceived value, adjusting prices real time, tailoring prices based on consumer behavior, and reassessing the SKUs that are offered and perhaps what platforms they're offered on. Overall, enhancing customer experience, both in-store and online, through things like payment methods, unified branding, digital to physical, store layouts, omni-channel integration. In other words, buy online, pick up in store, or buy online, return in store, and evaluating security measures beyond just locking cases, which seems to be in some ways failing or backfiring on some retailers.
So you mentioned customer experience, and actually, let's delve into that a little bit more. So our report highlights that 28% of retailers plan to close stores to focus on high-performing locations, which of course makes sense. So my question to you is, do you think that this is a potential shift from brick and mortar to online channels? And if yes, how can retailers balance this with maintaining a strong customer experience across these channels?
Well, first, I don't necessarily think it's a shift to online, though it is clear that current 2025 expectations, as confirmed by our CFO survey report, are that a good amount of store closures are going to continue in the upcoming year. In 2024, we had a lot of store closures that were largely driven by the large retail chain bankruptcies, such as Big Lots, Cones, Joann's, Party City, et cetera. In the upcoming year, I think that it's going to be probably more a reevaluation and optimization of store footprints and the retail channel as a whole that a retailer is using. As we discussed earlier, retailers are seeking ways to increase profitability going into 2025, and it's a necessity. And one of those things to increase profitability is obviously addressing their lease or real estate portfolios on a much broader scale. In other words, how can our real estate footprint, both by location, square footage, and associated costs, be maximized? And that maximizing is going to include closures from regions that are underperforming to where the customers are, or better yet, are where they want to be shopping. And it's going to be a change beyond store formats themselves. So It could be store formats, geographic locations, but it's an adjustment to target customers. So it might be somewhat more online, but maybe it's brick and mortar. The key here is recognizing that what their customers want and what works. And there is no one size fits all answer. For example, from an in-store experience perspective, the brick and mortar, payment options and touchless payment is likely going to be critical. It's a trend where the payment options that are now offered and how they're offered affect a customer's desire to shop in a store. Let's face it, shoppers will simply abandon their purchases if a checkout line seems too long, or if they have a phone on them but the store is not offering them the ability to shop via that phone wallet. Then there are types of SKUs or product options that do or do not need to be carried in store. Research seems to suggest that beauty, cosmetics, luxury are often preferred in store, whereas there are other commonly shopped online products that don't necessarily need to take up square footage space, and they just need to be available from a pickup perspective. So stores are essentially retail and fulfillment in nature. And then making the in-store experience feeling more personalized and exclusive. Less can be sometimes more when it comes to balancing store footprints with what consumers want.
So you mentioned two things. Number one is payment options or checkout options. And I will tell you that I am clearly one of those customers that, I could be holding 2, 3, 4 pieces, and unless I'm crazy about these pieces and the line is long and I see it not moving, I will just, leave it and I'll just either order it online or go elsewhere. So I think that is super important in today's customer experience. And then a lot of the things that you talked about probably require some level of investment. So I'll turn from revenue and the customer experience, and I'll turn it to the other side of the house, and that would be on the expense side, perhaps. So given the increased borrowing and interest in strategic partnerships over M&A and growth, right? How can retailers manage the financial flexibility needed to pursue these growth opportunities while also dealing with these associated costs? And I guess at the same time, what role do carve-outs or divestitures play in this strategy?
Well, so overall, dealing with costs is going to be all about balance. Similar to the whole online versus in-store brick and mortar philosophy, recognizing what works and what doesn't, or better yet, what best suits that retailer situation. So in many cases, it's going to be reassessing operations in terms of divesting of non-core underperforming operating segments or locations in order to raise capital and refocus on the core strengths. Reviewing their marketing and operational strategy to carve out or divest themselves of certain units can often unlock trapped value and bring in liquidity to fund strategic alternatives without having to take on additional debt and the costs associated with that debt. Further, joint ventures or alliances, which over 1/3 of our respondents seem to have their eye on in 2025, versus mergers or acquisitions, can provide access to new markets, new technologies, without a significant capital outlay, and also preserve some financial flexibility, which allows the company to retain some partial control and benefit from, tax advantages that may be associated with it or other strategic advantages that they can leverage. Either way, it's clear from the survey that retailers are going to look to debt and strategic partnerships as a way to invest in and capitalize on technology, and therefore addressing the need to respond to those customer wants and needs that we discussed earlier. Reassessing SKU rationalization or management and optimizing their footprint, possibly with different store formats, I guess, will need that capital infusion. The key for retailers, regardless of how they approach additional funding, though, this year, will be to ensure that they map out and address from a financial perspective the timing and effect of their actions. In other words, understand the timelines, immediate and long-term impacts of the strategy, and be realistic and revisit those projections often.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And you mentioned yet another thing, investment in technology, and I'll go a step further and kind of sharpen that a little bit, maybe investment in AI. And we actually have a whole nother show on investment in AI. So thank you very much, Michelle, for your time today. And if you found this episode insightful, be sure to share it with your friends and colleagues. Be sure to tune in next time so you can keep your finger on the pulse of the retail industry. Have a wonderful day.
And that concludes this episode of BDO's 60-Second Retail Podcast. Don't forget to tune in for the next episode. To find more information on our hosts, guests, BDO's services, or listen to previous episodes of 60-Second Retail, please visit www.bdo.com/60-second-retail.